Hey, what's up everybody? My name is Ricky and welcome to the HitLab Academy. Today I'm going to be showing you how you can make your program beats feel a little bit more natural. Right, so we're inside a Logic here and I've got a basic keys, bass and drum part. Let me play this back for you so you can hear what we are working with. Alright, so inside of the drum part, you'll notice that we've got three drum instruments here. We've got a kick, we've got a snare, and we've got a hi-hat. If we look at this kick here that I have, this is basically one MIDI note, and then on the left-hand side here, you'll see there's a little slider for velocity. And as I slide this up and down, you'll see that it changes color. All the way off is this sort of purple color, and all the way on is sort of this red color, and in between. So I like to sort of visualize this as sort of like the purple, blue is sort of like very soft. As it gets green, it gets into like a moderate sort of velocity, and then the higher the velocity goes here, it sort of gets hotter. It goes from like green to yellow to orange into red. So visually, when you're looking at this, I can see that that note is really loud, that one's loud, these are sort of all medium. So these color representations really help for when you open up a MIDI region that you've already done velocity edits to, that you can sort of very easily see which notes are at which velocity. So I'm going to put this back to sort of like 110 to where it was. So the first thing that you'll notice is we're talking about making a program drum kit feel a little bit more natural. The first problem you'll see here is that everything is the same velocity, apart from the kick. The kick is a bit louder here, but the snares, the hi-hats, everything is just one velocity, which is not really how people play instruments. Even someone who's very consistent will have slight variations within their velocities. Apart from slight variations, you'd also have deliberate variations, things like accented note versus unaccented notes. And we're going to be trying to work both of those things as a step one, and as a step two, we're going to be looking at some timing things. So let's have a look at the volume velocities first. So if I look at my kick here, in a program situation like this, a kick drum, we really want it to be quite consistent. So you could take some of these kicks randomly, every second one, for example, bring it down by like 3 or 4 units on your velocity slider. That will be enough to just really make them ever so slightly different that basically you're not hearing the same thing over and over and over, which makes a part of why things feel very programmed is because you're hearing something that's too precise, too clean, too clinical, and your brain goes, this is a computer, this is not a person behind it. So if we wanted to make this feel a little bit more natural, a little bit more like a human was involved, these very, very slight variations makes a big difference. Because if I played a kick drum, even if I 100% try and play them at the same volume, there are going to be very, very slight variations. So I'm going to do that with the kicks, and then I'm also going to be doing that with a snare. So I'm going to take the second snare and lift it up ever so slightly by like 4 units on my velocity slider. And that's going to be enough to just create a little bit of a difference there. Then on the hi-hat, let me just play this back for you to hear what the hi-hat's doing again. So the first thing that I want to do is I want to select all the hi-hats that are on the 8th note here, whichever beat you want to accent in your song. I can see that my kick is 1, my snare is 2, this would be beat 3, that would be beat 4. So what I'm trying to do here is I've actually decided to select the 8th notes in between to accent those, because it's sort of a 16th note based hi-hat groove. So I'm going to use essentially every second main beat of the hi-hat pattern, and I'm going to choose to accentuate these. So let's start with doing it quite extreme. I sometimes like pushing the extreme of certain parameters so you can really hear what it's doing, and then you can find where a happy sweet spot would be for you. So if we took this and we took it all the way up to 127, which is the maximum it can go, it would sound like this. Yeah, and I sort of like it there. I like it at about 110. It's a nice big difference. So you've got about, I would say, probably about a 30% or so increase in velocity between the loudest notes and the softest notes in the hi-hat now. So that's really, really nice. You could then also select sort of random ones in between if you wanted to, and manually sort of vary all of these a little bit. But that would be, if you've got a big drum part, that would be painstaking to do. So this is going to take us to our next step here, which is to bring in even more of a human element. Step one would always be to sort of take your groove that you've got and do sort of major macro velocity adjustments, sort of deciding which parts do I want accented, which parts do I want quieter, and do those sort of macro adjustments, which already makes a big difference, as you can hear. The next step would be to basically bring in a little bit more human element into this. And this is very subtle. This is not something that you want to overdo at all. So we're going to start by selecting all of the notes here. So you're going to go Command A, and then you're going to go up to the functions menu here, MIDI transform, and then you'll see that there's a function called Humanize, and we're going to select that. Right, now this brings up this dialog here, and this might look very confusing. This is very, very simple. Basically what we have is this value here is the one that you want to be looking at. This is a randomized value. So if we bring this all the way down to 0, you will notice that it's with this graph here gives you an idea of what your input and your output would be. You would see that this is going to be unchanged. It's still very even. The more I jack this up, you'll see that it starts introducing variations. So if I do this too much, let's say I go extreme and I go to like 30. Now, the way that we would apply this to these notes is if I had nothing selected and I press operate, nothing will happen. If I go select only, it'll select all of my notes in my MIDI region. And if I go select and operate, it would select and operate. So for example, if I have nothing selected and I click operate, nothing would happen. If I select, it'll select all the MIDI notes, and then I can click operate and it'll do its thing. If I had nothing selected and I click select and operate, it would select everything and it would operate, so it would apply that effect. Now, the reason why this is important is because sometimes we don't want to apply this to everything, which is the case that we have here. I definitely don't want to apply this to my kick drum because the kick is very locked with a bass in this specific demo. So I don't want to apply this to my kick. So I want to manually select my hi-hat and my snare drum. If I then click operate, it would only apply this effect onto those notes that I've got selected. So let's have a listen to this. That's a bit extreme for me. You can hear that what it's doing is it's very random now which notes is loud and soft, which is not, we've already decided which notes we want loud and soft. What we want here is just to introduce a small human element, which this is obviously overdone. While we've got this selected though, I do want to show you what this is doing. So first of all, it's obviously changing up velocities. It's making things louder and softer with the velocity. You can see it's really jacked those two notes up to be very red. This one is brought down very soft. The other thing it's doing, it's shifting the timing ever so slightly. So you can see some of these are not nicely on the grid anymore. And this is great. This is what we want. But again, this might be a little bit too much. So I'm going to undo, and we're going to basically take the part that we had, we're going to select the hi-hats and the snare, and we're going to bring this down all the way to around about, I would say 5, 6, or 7, around there would be enough just to introduce a little bit. And you can see, I'm going to undo here quick. You can see if you watch these MIDI notes, how little it's doing. It's just shifting things ever so slightly. If I zoom in and I apply that, you can see how it's moving things around a bit, but you'll see now the velocities have been randomized. So this is 84, this is 80, that's 110, that's 106. So it's brought in a maximum variety of sort of 5 or 6 units on the velocity, and it's moved things around timing wise just ever so slightly. And this is just giving it a little bit more of a human feel, a little bit not so precise, not so clean and clinical. So I'm going to close that up. Let's have a listen to a before and after. So I've copied this here. This is the same groove, but without the changes. So I want to play, let's swap these two around. I'm going to play through the unchanged version, and we're going to listen all the way through to the end. And you'll hear when the green one here kicks in, this is the one we've changed, and you'll hear the difference in what we've done. Here we go. Yeah, for me, I mean, it's a subtle difference, and I think that's the key here, is that we're not trying to make a program beat 100% like a human. We want to keep that programmed element, but we also don't want it to feel sterile and flat. So I can clearly hear the difference between the before and the after here, to say that before, and I'll play this again for you, this really had no bounce to it. It just felt like flat and sterile. And then when you play the one back that we've changed, you can hear how there's sort of an excitement that kicks in. There's a bit of a bounce, a little bit of, it just doesn't feel as flat. It feels like there's a bit more texture and dynamic to the groove. I'll play the end of the unchanged one into the changed one more time. Yeah, that definitely has a lot more movement and a lot more dynamic and feel for me. So I hope you found this video useful today. Please subscribe to the channel, like this video, and comment down below with some suggestions of videos that you would like us to make in the future. Anyways, if you guys want to work with us, you can head over to thehitlab.co.za. We do remote mixes, remote recording, and remote production as well. And we would love to work on your material and see where we could assist you further. Have a good day and peace out.